a suburban house, a family at church, a politician at a podium declaring traditional family values. Now listen to this from one of the most popular texts in early Christianity. He deprives young men of wives and maidens of husbands. For most of its history, Christianity wasn't pro-family, it was anti-family. And the nuclear family, that's not ancient tradition. That's the 1950s. To understand how we got here, we need to go back, way back. And the first thing to confront is this. For 1500 years, official Christian doctrine ranked celibacy above marriage. This wasn't fringe. This was mainstream church teaching from the earliest church fathers through the Reformation. The doctrine laid out a detailed hierarchy of sexual virtue. At the very top, lifelong virginity, the holiest state a Christian could achieve. Below that, sex within marriage, but only for procreation. Below that, couples who stopped having sex after producing children. Then, celibate widowhood, remaining unmarried after your spouse died. And at the very bottom, barely tolerated, remarriage after a spouse's death. Notice what's missing from the top of this pyramid: marriage, family, children, the things modern Christians call traditional values, ranked near the bottom of the virtue scale for 15 centuries. Even after the Reformation, when Protestants rejected mandatory clerical celibacy, they didn't invent the nuclear family. The dominant model in Protestant societies like Puritan New England was the patriarchal household, and it looked nothing like a 1950s sitcom. A patriarchal household was a social unit organized under the authority of a senior male, encompassing not just immediate family, but servants, dependents, and others. The patriarch presided over his wife, his children, servants, apprentices, and any unmarried man the community placed under his roof. Women could not live independently. Unmarried men were assigned to another man's household. Compare that to the 1950s nuclear family, a household consisting of two parents and their children living independently. Father, mother, 2 or 3 kids in a suburban house, small, private, self-contained. These are two completely different social structures separated by centuries of change. The nuclear family became Christian in a very specific historical moment. After World War II, America suburbanized. The baby boom reshaped demographics. Television sitcoms broadcast an idealized image of domestic life into every living room. And the Cold War created a political imperative to project stability, order, and moral clarity against godless communism. Christianity and the nuclear family fused together in American popular culture, not in ancient theology. This association is roughly 70 years old, not 2000. So if Christianity was anti-family for most of its history, what did that look like in practice? Let's open one of the most popular texts in early Christianity, the Acts of Paul and Thecla. Here's the story. Paul arrives in a city and preaches a radical message: celibacy and asceticism, the practice of severe self-discipline and abstention from physical pleasures, especially sexuality, for spiritual purposes. A young woman named Thecla hears him. She's engaged to be married. She's supposed to fulfill her role in a patriarchal household, become a wife, produce heirs, sustain the family line. Instead, she abandons her fiancé. She abandons her family. She abandons everything her society expects of her, and she's not alone. The text describes women, young men, virgins, even symbolically female animals drawn to Paul's message. On the other side stand the defenders of the household. Thecla's fiancé Samaris, her own mother Theoclea, city officials. Their complaint is revealing. They don't say Paul is theologically wrong. They say he deprives young men of wives and maidens of husbands. That complaint isn't about romance. It's about structural power. The patriarchal household depends on reproduction for its continuation. Follow the logic. Paul preaches celibacy. Women and the young people embrace it. No marriages means no reproduction. No reproduction means no new households and no heirs. And no heirs means patriarchal authority collapses. The entire system, the property transfer, political alliances, social order, runs on marriage and childbearing, right? When Thecla walks away from her fiancé, she isn't just making a personal choice. She's pulling a load-bearing brick out of the social structure, right? That's why the reaction is so violent. Thecla is condemned to death twice. The threat she represents isn't spiritual, it's existential, a common objection. But Jesus attended a wedding at Cana. Paul wrote about marriage in 1 Corinthians. Christianity can be anti-family. Here's the key. Paul explicitly said celibacy was better. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 38. He who refrains from marriage will do better. The wedding at Cana doesn't establish marriage as the highest ideal. The dominant tradition for 1500 years. Read every one of these texts through an ascetic lens. So what does all of this mean for us today? Let's put the full timeline in front of us and see what the sweep of Christian history actually looks like. The modern association of Christianity with family values and the nuclear family is not a recovery of ancient tradition, it's a reversal of it. For most of Christian history, the holiest path was to leave your family, reject sexuality, and pursue celibacy. The traditional family that politicians and the preachers invoke is barely older than rock and roll. Understanding this doesn't diminish anyone's faith, but it should make us more honest about what tradition means. And more curious about the radical countercultural origins of Christianity. A young woman walking away from everything her society expected towards something entirely new.